Why are we so drawn upward? Why, despite every hardship, does humanity keep returning its gaze to the sky? If you think about it, Earth is already an entire universe. We have oceans, mountains, deserts, cities, billions of stories. And yet, it's not enough. We look up and whisper, "What's out there?" There is something primal in this upward pull. From the very dawn of history, humans sought elevation. We built towers, raised temples, stretched spires into the sky as if trying to touch the clouds. Every civilization left behind symbols of this hunger. The pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurats of Babylon, the cathedrals of Europe. Each was a message written in stone. We long to reach the stars. Today the longing hasn't faded. It has only changed its form. Instead of stone pyramids, we raise skyscrapers of glass and steel. But standing on the 100th floor, we realize it's still not high enough. The sky remains beyond reach, and our thirst grows restless once again. Space draws us not only with beauty, it draws us with freedom. Out there, no borders, no fences, no passports. No governments, no lines on a map, only infinity. And within that infinity, a human being is small, but free. Now imagine, someday there is an elevator to space and anyone can ride. Not just astronauts, not just billionaires, but anyone. What would happen to us when the sky is no longer a ceiling but a doorway? Would the word impossible lose its meaning? And yet here lies the tension. If space calls so strongly, why is the road still closed? Why is every step into orbit paid with risk and staggering cost? Why in the 21st century is space still a privilege of the few? Perhaps the barrier isn't only technological. Perhaps humanity simply isn't ready to open the door to infinity. Every new frontier demands sacrifice. And the road to space may demand the greatest sacrifice of all, one we cannot yet imagine. So let me ask you, if tomorrow a space elevator existed, would you ride it? Would you step into the cabin, knowing that beneath you lies thousands of kilometers of emptiness, and only a slender tether ties you to Earth? What would win, your hunger to see space with your own eyes, or your fear of the unknown? Because space is not only beauty, it is cold, it is dark, it is a silence so absolute that even sound disappears. And when we dream of a road into space, we must remember, the road leads not only to the stars, but into the void. But this is what makes us human. We have always stepped where it was dangerous. We have always sought where it was risky. And perhaps this is why the idea of a space elevator refuses to die. It returns again and again, because it is too tempting, the reward too great to ignore. We don't yet know if the elevator will ever become real, but the very fact that we dream of it says everything. It tells us Earth is too small for our spirit. It tells us we need a road upward. And maybe, just maybe, humanity itself is a cabin rising slowly toward the stars. And no one knows what waits at the top. When we talk about space, we often think of stars, planets, galaxies. But pause for a moment and ask, what does it truly mean for a human being to go into space? It's not just moving from one place to another. It's crossing a boundary, the boundary that has always hung above our heads. For millennia, the sky was absolute. It was home to gods, to spirits, the place where prayers were sent. The sky was untouchable, and that gave it power. And now we speak of building a road there, an elevator, a cabin. Something so ordinary we use it daily in shopping malls. And suddenly that elevator becomes a key to the universe. Doesn't that feel almost sacrilegious? Perhaps this is the drama of the space elevator. It questions the sacredness of the sky itself. It says, there are no limits left. Everything is reachable. But are we ready for that? Will it destroy the sense of mystery that has always fueled our imagination? Humans need the unknown. We crave mystery. If everything becomes possible, if every door opens, what remains? Will life still feel meaningful in a world without the impossible? And yet, it is exactly this hunger for the impossible that drives us forward. We search for new worlds because the old ones become too familiar. We climb higher because everything below has already been mapped. It is a paradox. We fear losing mystery, but we ourselves chase it away. The space elevator is not just an engineering challenge. It is a symbol of our will to tame the impossible. We want to make space part of our daily lives. Imagine orbit as accessible as an airport. Business travelers going up for meetings, tourists buying weekend tickets, scientists shipping equipment as easily as ordering a truck. Would space feel closer, or would we stop valuing it? Think of the oceans. Once they were terrifying barriers. Ships left harbors and vanished forever. But then we mastered the seas, built bridges, airports, and suddenly the ocean was no longer a miracle. It became ordinary. And space? Are we ready for the day it too becomes ordinary? Maybe that is the highest achievement, to make the impossible routine. Isn't that the very definition of progress? What once looked like magic is now part of our daily routine. Electricity, the internet, flights across continents, all of these were once fantasy. And if one day a ride to orbit is as casual as an elevator ride, then we will have truly entered a new era. But until that day, the question remains. And it hangs over us, like the elevator's tether itself stretched between earth and sky. Are we ready to turn the sacred mystery of space into a road for everyone? What makes the idea of a space elevator so magnetic? Perhaps it's not the technical challenge itself, but the promise that one day space will feel close, simple, almost ordinary. And yet the ordinary and the miraculous always exist in tension. Maybe that's the true intrigue. Think of it. Every great leap in human history began as a miracle and ended as routine. Fire was once the secret of the gods, now it's a kitchen stove. Flight was once a myth, now it's a boarding pass to anywhere. Space is still miraculous for now, but we're already chipping away at that border. And the space elevator is the ultimate symbol, a dream shifting into daily life. But how do we feel when miracles become ordinary? Do we lose something essential along with the mystery? Humans don't only seek comfort, we seek challenge. If everything becomes accessible, where do we go next? Space has always been a mirror for our ambitions. When we look up, we don't only see stars, we see ourselves. We see what we wanted to achieve, and that reflection drives us. But if one day space becomes just another place, do we lose that driving force? On the other hand, maybe maturity as a civilization means this very thing. Treating miracles as calmly as we treat electricity. Taking the impossible into daily life, making magic routine. Isn't that a kind of victory? Picture a child taking their first ride into space on the elevator. For them, it won't be a feat or an act of courage. It will feel like going to grandma's for the holidays. And in that image lies a revolution. One generation dreams and trembles, the next takes orbit for granted. But how will that change us? Will we stop fearing heights once we've gone higher than any height? Or will fear find a new shape? Perhaps we will no longer fear falling, but rising too far. Rising to a place where the way back is lost. The space elevator is more than engineering. It is a mirror that asks, are we ready to trade mystery for access? Are we ready to swap myth for a timetable? And if we are, will we discover we've lost a piece of our soul? Or maybe not. Maybe the soul is not lost but expanded. Maybe only when miracles become ordinary do we start searching for new frontiers. And maybe that has always been the true meaning of progress. To discover new impossibilities so we can break them again and again. We've reached the point where dream and reality collide head-on. In the earlier chapters, we spoke of philosophy, of myth, of symbols. But now we have to ask, what actually stops us from building this road? Imagine a cable stretched from Earth to orbit. A slender line tens of thousands of kilometers long. It sounds beautiful, but the engineer immediately asks, what do you build it from? Steel won't hold, titanium will snap, even the strongest alloys are useless. We need a material that doesn't yet exist at the scale we require. And here the dream crashes into science. Scientists call this the material problem. We can sketch designs, calculate trajectories, picture the cabin. But without the cable, it's all fantasy. Yes, today we have carbon nanotubes and graphene, but they are too small, too expensive. To lift an elevator to orbit, we would need kilometers of flawless material. That remains beyond us for now. But has impossible ever stopped humanity? There was a time when railroads across continents were madness, when flying in the sky was insanity. And yet we laid the tracks, we soared above the clouds. Why should the space elevator be the one dream that fails? Of course, material is only part of the story. There are storms, lightning, high-altitude winds, orbital debris, even asteroids. Any one of these could sever the cable. Each is a danger that demands a solution. But in that danger lies the beauty. Each obstacle forces discovery. Think about it. When we wrestle with the impossible, we discover something within ourselves. Not just technology, but new horizons of human will. The space elevator is not just a project, it is an exam for civilization. A test of whether we can face the impossible one problem at a time. So here's the question, what matters more, the goal itself or the process of reaching it? If the elevator is ever built, we gain a road to space. But maybe the real treasure is not the cable or the cabin, but the path that leads us there. Because in the process, we become more than we were. In the end, the space elevator is more than engineering. It is a mirror of our ambition. And even if the material hasn't been found, even if no tether has yet been lowered from orbit, we've already changed. We've begun to think on the scale of a planet. And that alone is a giant step. When we talk about the challenges of a space elevator, it's easy to focus on materials, weather, or orbital debris. But there's another barrier we rarely mention, the human being. Are we ready psychologically and culturally for space to become available to everyone? Think about it. Until now, space has been a stage for heroes. Astronauts and cosmonauts are symbols of courage, the elite of humanity. Every launch was a global event. But what happens when a ride to orbit is no more special than a subway trip? Will space lose its magic? And will that shift the very structure of our society? History shows that every new mode of travel reshaped culture. Railroads created the industrial age. Cars gave people freedom and transformed cities. Airplanes turned the planet into a global village. What will a space elevator do to us? Perhaps it will give us a new sense of scale. Because rising to orbit means seeing Earth whole with our own eyes for the first time. Not photos, not movie scenes, but the real view. And that view can shatter our perspective. Astronauts call it the overview effect. When you see the planet as a fragile sphere, borders fade, politics dissolve, differences vanish. Only life itself remains. If millions could experience that, would the world change? But there's another side. Space is danger, it is vacuum, radiation, cold. Can we accept that an elevator might fail? That a tether might snap? Is humanity prepared for those risks if access to space becomes mass scale? And beyond that, are we ready for the social shifts? Because once space is open to everyone, new inequalities will appear. Some will ride often, others rarely. Some will build businesses in orbit, others will remain grounded. Will the road to space create new conflicts, new borders, only this time above Earth? Perhaps this is why the space elevator still belongs mostly to science fiction. We sense that technical barriers can be solved. But whether we ourselves are ready, that is the harder question. And it may be the most important one. Because the road to space does not begin on Earth. It begins within us. We've spoken of symbols, fears, even the barriers within ourselves. But there is another force shaping this story, power and politics. Because a road to space could never belong to a single person. It would inevitably become a stage for competition, negotiation, perhaps even conflict. Think about it. A cable tens of thousands of kilometers long, stretching beyond the atmosphere. Where would it be built? On whose land? Who would control the entry and the exit? Would the space elevator become the most guarded border on Earth? History is clear. Every new frontier becomes a prize to be fought over. Sea routes divided empires. Aviation reshaped war and commerce. The internet created battles for data and control of information. What then will happen with the road to space? Imagine one nation builds the elevator. Would it not instantly hold absolute advantage? Control over the road to space is control over humanity's future. And would the rest of the world truly believe that road is open to all? Here lies the paradox. The space elevator is imagined as a road into infinity, a symbol of openness. But on Earth, it could become a symbol of division. And that may be our greatest test. Not learning to build the tether, but learning to trust one another. Perhaps this is why the space elevator feels like a challenge not only to physics, but to politics. Creating the material is difficult. Building a system of cooperation may be harder still, because a cable can be cut in seconds. And if the road to space becomes a tool of blackmail or threat, then the dream of an open universe could turn into yet another source of fear. So we must ask, are we, as a civilization, ready for a road to space that belongs to everyone, not just the few? Can we share it as we share the air and the seas? Or will we once again lock it behind the barbed wire of self-interest? The space elevator is not just engineering, not just a cultural symbol. It is a test of civilization's maturity. And if we cannot pass it, perhaps the true barrier lies not in the sky, but in our hearts and minds. Suppose one day we overcome the technical and political barriers. Another question rises: why do we need this? What will a space elevator truly give humanity beyond its symbolic beauty? At first glance, the answer seems simple: cheaper access to space. Today, every kilogram sent to orbit costs thousands of dollars. An elevator could cut that cost dramatically. That means more satellites, more stations, more opportunities for science and business. But is that really the whole point? Economists will say, a space elevator opens a new industry. Orbital factories, solar power stations, asteroid mining. All of this becomes more realistic when access to orbit is cheap and common. Imagine cities powered by energy harvested from space, rare metals delivered from celestial bodies, and humanity gaining fresh resources for growth. Doesn't that sound like a second industrial revolution? Yet beyond economics lies something deeper. The elevator is not just transport, it is a new perspective. Everyone who rides it will see Earth whole. And perhaps millions of people will feel what astronauts call the overview effect. A sense of unity, of fragility, of beauty. Could that be the most valuable outcome? Still, I must ask, what if this road changes us in ways we don't expect? What if along with opportunity come new dangers? Every great invention in history brought both blessing and risk. Fire warmed and burned. Electricity lit the world and killed. The internet connected and divided. What will the road to space bring? Once again we arrive at tension. Yes, the elevator may give us energy, resources, horizons, but it may also bring new conflicts, new threats, new challenges. This is the nature of progress. Every discovery is a door with both light and shadow behind it, and we never know which will dominate. So the key question is not whether we can build it. The key question is why we should. And if our answer is right, then the road to space will be more than a project. It will be a step into the future. Every step humanity has taken into space has carried emotion. The first satellite, the first human in orbit, the first steps on the moon. These were not just scientific milestones, they were emotional earthquakes. The world held its breath at the first beeps from orbit. People wept when Yuri Gagarin shouted, "Let's go!" And today we must ask, what emotions will the space elevator awaken? Because it won't be just a launch, not just an experiment. It will be an event that rewrites daily human life. Access to orbit will belong to millions. Does that mean the miracle becomes routine? Or that routine itself becomes a miracle? Picture a young couple celebrating their anniversary, not in a restaurant, but in a cabin rising into the sky. Picture a scientist skipping endless negotiations with space agencies, simply buying a ticket and taking equipment to orbit. Picture a student who rides the elevator into space as casually as a school trip to a museum. What emotions will that stir? Joy, awe, or maybe indifference? Because there's a danger. The more accessible a miracle becomes, the faster we stop valuing it. Few today look at airplanes with the same wonder the Wright brothers' spectators once felt. Might we one day stop marveling at space itself? But maybe the opposite will happen. Every person is unique, and each will experience it differently. For some, the elevator will be entertainment. For others, a spiritual awakening. Some will feel small and fragile, others powerful and infinitely free. And in that spectrum of emotions lies the truth. Space is a mirror, and in it each of us will see ourselves. So the question isn't only how we build the elevator, it's how we live the experience. Will we preserve the sense of wonder? Will we raise generations who see space not just as a backdrop for selfies, but as a great mystery worthy of respect? And perhaps that is the greatest challenge. Technology we will one day master. The tether we will one day stretch. But if we lose our capacity for awe, if we lose reverence before infinity, then no elevator will ever make us truly a spacefaring species. We're getting closer to the heart of the mystery, but it still isn't fully revealed. We've spoken of symbols, fears, technology, politics. But there is another element we must face, the dimension of time. How long will it take for this dream to become reality? A century, 2, or maybe just a few decades? Remember? Less than 70 years separated the Wright brothers' first flight from humans walking on the moon. History teaches us one thing. Progress always moves faster than we expect. And yet the space elevator is different. It's not just a new machine or a new technology. It's infrastructure on a planetary scale. To build it may require not one generation, but an entire era. So here lies the real question. Does humanity have the patience? We live in an age of instant gratification. We want quick wins, fast tech, solutions here and now. But the elevator cannot be rushed. It demands decades of research, colossal investment, international cooperation. Are we willing to commit to a project whose fruits may be seen not by us, but by our grandchildren? On the other hand, maybe that's what makes the elevator unique. It asks us to adopt a new mindset. Not the mindset of a single generation, but of a civilization. Not what do I gain tomorrow, but what will the world be 100 years from now? Isn't that the real test? Now imagine, a century passes and a cabin finally begins to climb into space. We may not live to see that day. But the act of beginning changes us. Just as building cathedrals changed the people who laid their stones, even though they knew they would never see the spire completed. The space elevator could be the cathedral of the 21st century, a temple not of faith but of reason and will. And in this paradox lies its beauty. It is too vast for one person, too long for a single lifetime. But precisely because of that, it can unite humanity. Because the road to space is not a path for individuals, it is a climb for our entire species. We often think of space as silence, emptiness. But if the road there becomes real, we'll discover it is not silent at all. It will carry new sounds of civilization, cabins gliding up and down, voices marveling at Earth from above, laughter, fear, awe, all part of humanity's new symphony. And here I want to talk about something often overlooked: culture. What will the space elevator do to our culture? What songs will be written, what films made, what myths born? Every great invention has always inspired stories. Steamships inspired novels, airplanes gave rise to poetry and cinema. What stories will be born of a cabin climbing into space? Imagine a painter capturing the sky not from Earth, but from a cabin 1,000 kilometers high. Imagine a poet struggling to describe the moment when the planet lies below and stars fill the window. Imagine music shaped by the rhythm of ascent, by the heartbeat in weightlessness. Culture always responds to new horizons, and the space elevator may become the grandest horizon art has ever seen. But I also feel a worry. What if culture turns the elevator into just another attraction? What if it becomes background for selfies and advertising? Would the road lose its depth? Or maybe that is the natural cycle. First comes awe, then irony, then habit, and then a deeper reflection. That has always been the pattern. And maybe that's how humanity will truly learn to live with space, not just dream of it. In the end, culture is the breath of civilization. And if one day space itself becomes part of our culture, if it enters our books, our paintings, our songs, then we will have truly stepped into a new era. We are close to the end of this story, yet the suspense remains. The central question still hangs in the air. Is the space elevator truly possible? Science fiction or future reality? Today we see two worlds. In one, engineers point to missing materials, to risks and dangers. In the other, dreamers insist, if not today, then tomorrow. If not us, then our children will build this road. And in the clash between realism and hope, tension is born. Skeptics say it cannot be done. They show equations, stress limits, storms, lightning, meteorites. And all of it is true. Science is honest. It demands proof. But dreams have a way of ignoring proof. Dreams live in the space where answers don't yet exist. Optimists reply, but remember, human spaceflight was impossible too. The moon landing was impossible. The internet was impossible. The history of humanity is the history of the impossible, again and again made real. Why should the space elevator be the one exception? Yet there is a third voice, the cautious. Those who say, yes, it may be possible, but maybe not yet. Because technology must mature. Because humanity must learn to cooperate. Because we may not be ready. And perhaps in those words lies more truth than we wish to admit. So we face three scenarios. First, the elevator is impossible, and it will remain only in books and films. Second, it is possible, and it will be built within this century. Third, it is possible, but its time has not yet come. Which is right, no one knows. And that uncertainty is what makes the story so compelling. For if the answer were obvious, we would already be at peace. But instead, we live in anticipation. In hope, in doubt, in the eternal human hunger to ask, what if it really can be done? And now we reach the end. Through this journey, we've carried the question, the space elevator, science fiction or future reality? We've asked questions, explored fears and hopes, searched for meaning. And now it's time to draw a line. The truth is, today the space elevator does not exist. And perhaps it won't for a long time. The technology isn't ready, humanity isn't ready, politics is tangled. And yet this is the wonder. The elevator already exists. Not in steel or in tether, but in our culture, in our imagination, in our hunger for the impossible. When Tsiolkovsky spoke of a tower to the heavens, he knew it could not be built. But he understood that the very idea would change people. When Clarke wrote his novel about the elevator, he wasn't predicting. He was inspiring those who might one day try. And today we are part of that chain. We keep dreaming, because without dreams, humanity stops moving. So is it fiction or reality? The answer is simple. It is fiction, slowly becoming reality. Not tomorrow, not in 10 years, but someday. Because that is how dreams work. They begin as myths and end as manuals. And maybe that is the true magic of progress, turning the impossible into the everyday. Yes, one day the elevator will exist. Not because scientists or politicians decree it, but because that is what it means to be human. We always build roads to where we are not yet. And the greatest road of all is the road to the stars. So let's hold on to that feeling. Not fear, not doubt, but inspiration. Because every dream is fuel for the future. And if we keep dreaming of the elevator, then one day a cabin will rise. And as we look down at Earth through its window, we will say, yes, we did it. We turned fiction into reality. And in that moment we'll understand it's only the beginning.